Testing the video autofocus with the Sigma 16-300 at 16 now, f3.5. This is going to be rather tricky and fairly pointless, because you're not going to go too wild with video skills with this lens. But yeah, right, let's just see how it fares as we move out, because it's not a fixed aperture, of course. Now, as soon as we move, I've moved a bit. Not at 24 yet. We're at 24. We're not at 24. We're probably at about 20. And it's gone to f4. 35. We're at f4.5 and 50, which I'm gonna have to dial. Well, I think I'm just gonna have to adjust this in post. There's 50. We'll adjust it a bit. It's not gonna be pretty, as always. But jumping in and out. Any focus breathing, any close focusing issues. Not too bad. Now I'm going to go a bit too crazy, because if that wasn't bad enough, we're going to go to 180, just over 180, take off the ND, because it's now at f6.3, and I'm not sure if I can do this. That is me there, ducking down because I've not framed it right. Well, we're in, I think. Has it got me? Yeah, we probably have to adjust again a bit. Doing a bit of squatting now, so we can see if it's adjusting the background. Let's see how far back I can go with my old squatter. This is ridiculous. Anyway, we've done that test. Let's see. Has it still got me? I wonder how close it can get. I know at 70 you can get 1 to 2. That's going to be too close. Has it got me? I'm not sure. Anyway, no one needs to see me that close. Let's zoom back to 16 and whack this back on and down a bit. This is going to be a nightmare to edit, but anyway, it is what it is. It doesn't have to be all fine and pretty. Get nice and close. Let's look at this thing in the studio and then get out and test it. I wish I had it on my trip to Colombia, although it is a bit big for my travel likes, but the range, yeah, very, very fun. Let's crack on. Well, there she is. I did not receive the hood, so I'm going to use a different hood. The one I'm going to use is going to be a bit deeper, but shouldn't be a big problem. We'll see in testing if we need to knock that off. But anyway, there it is. This is 16mm, so on our Fujifilm system, that is locked. So there's a lock there at the wide end. 16mm or 24mm full frame equivalent. Good job I zoomed this out. I mean this, not this. To 300 or 450mm full frame equivalent, which is absolutely mental, but comes with a sacrifice, of course, because the aperture, there not being an aperture ring, it is a contemporary lens, but there you go. Aperture 3.5 at the widest to 6.7 at the longest, and that's 3.5 to f22 or 6.7 to f45. F45, my word, f45. That is that right? Anyway, we'll put it on the screen if I've got that wrong or something. Made in Japan. Minimum focusing at the widest of 17 centimeters and at the telly 105 centimeters, so just over a meter. Now, maximum magnification ratio 70mm gives you 1 to 2. We'll see how we get on with that. Dust and splash resistance 67mm. Filter thread. I do like how the markings on the lens are black on black. That is beautiful. That's going to be really cool to avoid reflections and stuff, although with this kind of lens don't usually have that kind of problem, but really do I love that angle of view. Again, going back to that zoom, 83.2 to 5.4 degrees, beautiful. 9 diaphragm blades, 20 elements. We're seeing some serious class lately. In 14 groups. This is on the T3, so I'll be testing it on my T4 because I'm going to need the stabilization because it's going to get a bit wild like that. But I'm hoping to just have a run and gun test with this. Well, that's basically it. I do have my grips on my body, which I probably will actually do with this. Sometimes I go out and just try and have it as compact as possible, so I take my grips off unless it's going to be a long all-day shoot. And I do shoot with my test about 1,000 frames, but you know, the weight 615 grams, so yeah. But what an absolute mental zoom. Is it worth bothering with? Let's find out. Way over 2,000 shots later, got a bit carried away. Yeah, I gotta say, the lens doesn't feel cheap. Should last a while. It's got weight, but it doesn't feel too weighty after a long period shooting with it handheld. There's nothing to make life easier, like an AF/MF switch or aperture ring, of course, but otherwise the lens handles perfectly well on my T4, and even at 300, I was able to get shots handheld thanks to the IBIS of my camera, and autofocus, not bad at all. At the widest end, the center sharpness is quite good, the edges not bad. The best overall is around f8 in, let's say, the middle of the zoom range. It's probably where you're going to see the best sharpness, which overall is closer to very good. In fact, typically the longest end, not the sharpest, but it still performs pretty well, all things considered. Color rendering, basically very good, as is contrast. Chromatic aberration, minor, and there is some barrel distortion at the widest and pin cushion at the telly. Nothing too wild though. The lens also controls flare pretty well. Would have been nice to have some tough situations to test that properly, but we have tested it otherwise. Yeah, vignetting, noticeable at the maximum aperture. Bokeh, I've got to say, pleasing. As always, bokeh is a personal one, but I think in the right circumstances, using the mid to the telly end produces some decent out of focus effects. All things considered, the image quality is pretty good for a super zoom, and with plenty of lights, a lot of fun could be had with this lens. The fact that this also performs pretty well at 1:2 macro at 70mm is actually a bonus, and I found to be quite decent. This lens from Sigma is no bad egg at all, and at £599 in 2025, it's not a bad choice for a super zoom. Of course, the real competition is the cheaper Tamron 18-300, which has a slightly better autofocus performance, stabilization, touch faster aperture at the telly end, but is slightly less wide. It does offer a smidge better image quality though, but there are arguments to say that 16mm over 18mm makes all the difference, and I'm definitely a fan of those extra few mil. The Sigma is also slightly smaller and a touch lighter, which I always appreciate, but it's not that much of a difference for it to matter in the real world. If you're traveling with it, you know, it's a muchness. As always, your opinion is important. So have you tried these lenses? What do you think? Let us know in the comments.